Good morning, Closeteers. How y'all doing? Hey, right on the end of my walk, I cheated today. I cheated. I've been cheating all week. So, since I've been cheating all week, I didn't have it in me to push like I normally do. So today I think I probably did 2.5 miles. It's better than nothing, but I'll take it though. I got moving. So, today, you guys, I am going to start to talk about staying beyond the expiration date. Whew. As you know, with a lot of food, there's an expiration date on it. Or a use by date, suggestion. It may be spoiled, no good, whatever. If you don't use the item, eat the item by that date. So, how do you know that the expiration date is approaching, has approached, or has passed, right? Let's do that. For me. Now remember, when I tell you this stuff, I am not a licensed professional. This is my personal opinion based on my experience, right? And I believe experience is a good teacher. So, for me, I started taking the long way home, or even sometimes it resulted in me sitting in traffic rather than just getting off and taking a shorter route. So where I worked, there was no less than 4 routes I could take from work to get home. And one route would be, by time with no traffic, longer because it's the street and you have to account for the stoplights and stuff like that. But when it's traffic on the freeway, it's the better route. The freeways, because I could go home 3 different ways on the freeway. So I had started taking the long way, basically, sitting in traffic, driving myself crazy. I had even started working overtime. And I had worked for the company for 3 or 4 years and had never worked a day of overtime because overtime was optional for us. And I had never worked a day of overtime. And I started working overtime, and even like my managers and certain coworkers, they noticed it too, like, right? But this is what I was doing so that I can spend less time at home. Anytime home is not a place where you can find peace, where you could come in and put off all the troubles of the world at the door, come in and find peace and rest and relaxation. Anytime home is not that for you, you have stayed beyond the expiration date. Period. You have stayed beyond the expiration date, in my humble opinion. So I was doing anything I could to not be at home, and or when I'm at home, to have it be only thing I have to do is spend a couple of minutes with my children, bathe, grab something to eat, bathe, and go to sleep, right? And I'm literally sleeping on side of this dude and we're not even talking. I mean, it's nothing. There's no spooning, cuddling, whatever, none of that, right? And so some nights it would be so bad that I would even go sleep on the couch, or I would go sleep in another room. Anything, because the hostility between us was so horrible that it could be felt just with us being next to one another. When you stay beyond the expiration date, please note, animosity, resentment, all those things will build, and you could possibly end up hating the other person. That's just how strong it can become if you're not careful. So I don't advise ever staying beyond the expiration date. I had and at this time I was really a part of organized religion, organized church, Christianity, however you want to say it. I was really a part of it. So I was doing these unhealthy things like staying beyond the expiration date because I was being taught that, marriage is sacred to God, in the eyesight of God, and fight for your marriage. But nobody had ever stopped to take the time to ask the question, how long have you been fighting? What have you been doing to better the relationship? Are you the only one fighting, right? So no one asks us these questions. So because no one asks these questions, it just seemed like it was more concerned to me. It was more concerned with the ideal or the optics of having married people in your church than it was with having healthy married people in your church, or whole people who are whole in your church. To me, that it became that for me. So the optics of us being a couple, the optics of us being a family is more important than us actually having any sort of happiness, having any sort of healthiness to our relationship. And so that in part assisted in my staying beyond the expiration date, because I began to worry about what people were going to think if I got a divorce, what people were going to, I began to worry about the optics of a failed marriage above the effect that it was having on me mentally, physically, all those things, even spiritually, because it was sometimes where I couldn't even pray. I was so frustrated. I was so unhappy. And a lot of us, not everybody, but a lot of us stay in relationships because we stay beyond the expiration date because we're comfortable, right? We know what to expect from this person. We don't want change. We don't want to take a chance on either being alone or even learning a new person. So we stay with what we're comfortable with, regardless of how toxic it is, how unhealthy it is. And that is a very dangerous place to be because, like I said, you build up resentment. You also lose time, and you may even end up with regret, right? So it's not really good to do. For me, it was so bad that we had forgotten our anniversary. That's how bad we weren't celebrating anniversary, birthdays, Mother's Day. And traditionally we had. Now, if you don't celebrate those things, it doesn't matter. But if you traditionally celebrate these things, and no, you're forgetting or not really putting forth any effort to celebrate these things, there's a problem. If you could live in a house with someone and go days, sometimes even weeks, without a conversation, and you guys have children that are school-age kids, without a conversation with this person, sometimes not even a hi or a bye, most of the time, not even a hi or a bye, then you have stayed beyond the expiration date, right? There's a saying, I don't know the phrase, who coined it, where it came from, but it said, it goes something like, not talking to one another or something just teaches the other person how to live without you or how to go on without you. And that's really what had begun to happen, but it was unhealthy. It was not amicable. There was tension there, right? There was tension there. And so I even begin to think like, how is this going to work with the kids? How are we going to co-parent if I leave now? Like, how is that going to happen? And even though I had stayed beyond my expiration date, my heart was still there. This love that I had for this man was unbelievable. It truly was like almost agape. It was beyond. I had never experienced anything like it, of course. And he had done so many things prior to it, so many red flags, whatever, but I ignored them because I was so in love. I was so in love. To even leave the relationship, once I started feeling like it was time to go, to even leave the relationship, I had to have a conversation with God. And I had to pray that God would remove the love that I had. That God, now imagine asking God to remove love when God is love. So I had to ask God to remove the love and to make it not hurt, because it would get the times before when I tried to leave, I would be okay for like a day or two. That strong, I'd be good. I'm not thinking about him. It is what it is. All those good old cliches and all that. That's how I felt. But by day 3, I was putty and ready to go back, and didn't know how I would live without him. So to go from I couldn't think of a future without this man. When he went to prison, I was so afraid of being seen without him, or like a family without him. I didn't like taking pictures with the kids because he couldn't be in the picture. So during those years of him being in the penitentiary, I think there's maybe 2 pictures of me with our children without him, because to me that felt like living without him, like him not being there. So I was really uncomfortable with it. And this is just me trying to show you how much in love I was with this dude. Like, it was unreal. So to be able to untwine that, to be able to leave that, it took strength, it took courage. And then most of the time, at that point in the relationship, he was He wasn't the only person bringing in money, but he was the person bringing in a considerable amount of money. The money that paid the bills, the car notes, the rent. I was not that person prior to him going to prison. So that would be another reason for me not really wanting to leave. I was unsure, the uncertainty of it all. But when he came home, even though when he came home, I was the person. From the time he came from prison to the time I made the decision, I think there was only maybe a 6-month period there where he brought in more money than me. So I'm not saying this to say that that's a reason to leave or anything like that. I'm saying that even in that situation, I still was uncomfortable leaving because of the love. It had nothing to do with the money. And throughout that time, I taught him how to treat me because I let so much slide. I let so many unhealthy things go on. And so he became real comfortable with being able to be that way. Like I told you guys in one of the first videos, and if this is your first video, let me just in brief say, prior to him going to prison, we didn't have a perfect marriage, but it was damn close. It was damn close. The person that went to prison is not the person that came out of prison. And unfortunately, the person that came out of prison was not a better person. So it was not like I needed to step my game up because he had stepped his game up. He came out a totally different person, and it was not for the good. So but I kept saying things like, oh, he needs to get reacclimated. He needs to get reacclimated. So I'll give him this time. Oh, it's okay. I understand that he had to be this way. And so, but in essence, I was teaching him how to treat me. And so it became unbearable. And we got to that point where it had expired. Kids and all, it had expired. Don't stay for kids. Don't stay for money, because it can kill you. I was so stressed out. But it had got to the point where it was so bad. It had gotten so bad where we literally were roommates that didn't like each other. We were roommates that didn't like each other. So, and a lot of that came on. So at one point, he hurt his foot, one foot. I can never remember which side, because both sides ended up being hurt, but it was one foot at one point. And this took him off work. And I was in school at the time. I was in school, but I wasn't working at this time. I was in school, but I had my side hustle. I always had a side hustle, trust. And so when he got injured, I took a part-time job. So I'm in school, and I'm doing a part-time job, and things are falling apart. Things are falling apart between us, in the household. Things are falling apart. I am a go-getter, an overachiever. I set a goal, and I mean to reach that goal. So one of the goals that I set was to graduate college with a certain GPA. Now, I had to bring up the rear because I had started college right out. Well, what would have been right out of high school if I hadn't dropped out. I later went back and got my GED. But by age, I was skipped twice. I tested gifted, I was skipped twice, and I dropped out my 11th grade year, right? No, my 12th grade year. I dropped out. So by count, by age 18, you be graduating high school. So I went back then and just took the GED, and I checked into a junior college, and so many things went wrong. So many things happened that I ended up having to quit, but it was beyond the withdrawal date, so I had 4 fails. Hurt my heart. 4 fails, because outside of being beyond the withdrawal date, I was an A student. So when I went back to college, I had to bring up the rear of that. Those grades followed me. So I made up in my mind what I was gonna do, GPA wise. I could not. There was no room for B's, C's, or anything else. I needed all A's to graduate with honors. That's a lot to put on yourself. I don't recommend doing it, especially when you're a full-time mom, a full-time wife, a full-time student, and a part-time employee with a side hustle. So my last semester of junior college, before I'm ready to transfer onto the 4-year university, I had a heart attack. Not good. Now, I was extremely overweight at the time. I was morbid obese. And the assumption, just by looking at me, of course, was that I was unhealthy, and it was something to do with my weight and stuff like that. However, I had an angiogram. The angiogram could find nothing wrong. Now, they diagnosed me with MI, which is myocardial infarction. However, I didn't find out 2 years later that was the worst diagnosis for them to give me, because you cannot have an MI without having a questionable angiogram. This doctor searched hard on that angiogram, and he said there is no blockage, absolutely none. There is nothing wrong with your heart, nothing wrong with your arteries. So the cardiologist came in to see me, and he said, it's stress. Period. You are entirely too stressed out. You have to lower your stress. Lower your stress. I would that you, of course, lose weight and get healthier as far as looking at you. He said, but I can't tell you that that's the reason that you had a heart attack. So this doctor was real. He was not my cardiologist. He was the hospitalist, the cardiologist of the hospital. So about that time, my at the time husband walked in, and he sat down. And when he sat down, the doctor was like, making sure he could talk in front of him. And I said, oh, that's my husband. And so he said, oh, how long you guys been married? And when I told him, he said, now, he was not joking. And this pissed my ex off. It pissed him off. He said, there's your stress right there. But he had no idea how much truth he was telling, right? He had no idea how much truth he had just dealt. He had no idea. And so it pissed my ex off. And normally, if you see a hospitalist or a doctor in the hospital that has their own practice, they will make an appointment for you to come see them, right? And that will end up being your specialist. my ex wasn't having it. He never wanted me to see this dude again. Okay, y'all, the sprinklers just came on. Y'all know what that means. I'm gonna start walking home before I get soaking wet. So he never wanted me to see this cardiologist again. He refused it, right? Because he was so upset by what he had said. And I know a lot of people listen to this and be like, yeah, the doctor was wrong. But he was telling so much truth, right? He was telling so much truth. I stressed myself out so bad, worried about my relationships, right? Worried about our finances. Just worried, period. I was always in a state of sadness or worry. And just so you know, I was in my 30s and not my late 30s when this took place. I was mid 30s when this took place. So I'm gonna end the video here, and I will do a part 2 to staying beyond the expiration date. But I want to advise you, it takes a toll on your health as well. It takes a toll on your mental health and your physical health. Sometimes you cannot give the heart what the heart wants. Sometimes you have to make decisions with your mind. Okay, look, I love you guys. I thank you for taking the time to watch my videos. Please do me a favor and click like, share, and subscribe. Take care. Bye.